and Mark, I mean, let's talk about Rahm Emmanuel. I mean, we've talked around this table and to you in the past about the importance of folks like Scott Walker and Chris Christie taking on public sector unions. If Rahm Emmanuel follows in their footsteps in getting tough with the unions, how impactful will that be nationally for the debate we've been having for 2 years now about public sector unions?
Yeah, well, the fact is the media seems to handle it a little bit differently based on the partisan makeup of who's involved in the engagement.
Really?
You know? Yeah, well, you guys don't, and thank you for doing that because this is an important issue. The fact that Rahm Emmanuel has to go to, battle lines with these people is an evident fact of the cost of bargaining. And what we're saying here is it's perfectly okay for 350,000 students to be out of school, but yet the government needs to keep a certain number of schools open for nutritional reasons. That's part of the lawsuit too. Really just lays bare the problem of union monopoly power in government. Franklin Roosevelt told us back in 37 it wouldn't work. George Meany said in 55 it wouldn't work. The AFL-CIO said it wouldn't work in 1959, and now Rahm Emmanuel is telling us, guess what? It doesn't work.
And what he's really telling us doesn't work is actually the blue social model, the entire encompassing public sector union support network that has been put in place over the course of decades across the Midwest that relies on these enormous pensions, that relies on these old systems of doing things. They're breaking down all around him, and Rahm Emmanuel can do math. He can look at the numbers and understand we can't afford to pay these people this much anymore, which is why this is such a wonderful element of Rahm Emmanuel jiu-jitsu. It's a classic instance of it, because essentially he's put the teachers' unions in a position where, in order to come back at him on this lawsuit, they're going to have to argue that it is economic issues, that it's actually we just want more money.
Right.
Yeah, and that actually puts them in a wonderful, wonderful position.
Does anyone have any insight into, maybe Mark knows, what kinds of conversations, and we can speculate, I'm not above speculation, what kind of conversations we think President Obama is having with Rahm Emmanuel over this?
I'm not sure we can say that on air.
Oh, really?
But I have a question about that to Mark. When I've been looking at this all unfolding, I've thought, this could be President Obama's, quote-unquote, sister soldier moment, where he tells those teachers to get their butts back in the classroom and teach those kids in Chicago who have terrible educational attainment rates, get those kids graduating from high school literate, and be on the side of parents and children. Why isn't he doing that?
Well, I think he might, and I think you're spot on in your analysis there. As more and more parents who are not involved in the politics of all this, but are involved in finding daycare, finding new ways to get their kids to where they can be supervised during these days that they're out, I think he's going to feel the pressure. Not that Illinois is in play, not that Chicago's in play politically, but the American public is watching.
Which would make it safe for him. It would make it safe for him to say this because he doesn't have to worry about losing Illinois because teachers' unions, don't show up at the polls or don't give him money. This is a win-win for him, don't you think?
Well, in his autobiography, he says, I owe these unions. When they call, I return their phone calls as fast as I can. So he's got a little tug here, but I think you're right. Politically, it'd make a lot of sense for him to tell him to get back to work.
Well, last week, maybe I was a little wrong about this, because I said to this table a couple of times, this is not about the kids. It is actually about the kids. It's about holding 350,000 kids hostage while the union. What did you say it was about? If it wasn't about the kids. It was sort of a play on words, Will. Just go with me here. It's about keeping these kids hostage to the union demands here, because if you can't determine what your personnel is, if you can't actually hire and fire people, there's no hope of a better organization. So people who say they want better schools, we've talked about it here before, it's becoming more of a bipartisan issue. Isn't this just laying bare the fact that that's really not what's at play here? I actually kind of like this because it shows it as a hostage negotiation. The whole country gets to see how teachers' unions actually operate in advance of the election. What do you think?
That's absolutely true. Now, this is always going to play on people's heartstrings because teachers have that spot in all of our hearts because we know a teacher that we liked, that helped us advance our own education. But the truth is the biggest impediment to kids' education in this country are teachers, okay? It's teachers in the form of teachers' unions, but that is the big, bad gorilla, the big, bad devil in our entire education process. And if this is the chance, I don't know that it is.
Are you calling teachers' unions devilish gorillas?
That was good, yes. Yes, Amy, I am. And if this is the chance at which to break the devilish gorilla at the hands of a Democratic mayor, then that is very, very sweet.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone at this table, it was George W. Bush who talked about education in terms of the soft bigotry of low expectations. Yes. Yeah. I think that's the problem here. It's not just that kids are being held hostage over money, although that's bad. It's that they're also being held hostage over not wanting to be held to higher standards.
Right.
These are teachers who are saying, I don't want to be evaluated that way. I don't want that a microscope on me in that way. I don't want to be held accountable.
And it's even worse than that.
How grotesque is that?
It's even worse than that. They blame the children's families and socioeconomic conditions for the fact that only 15% of Chicago kids can do math at their grade level. That is outrageous.
They simply want the same thing that all other government employees get, and that is a guaranteed job for life with very few expectations.